I've been asked many times by beginner watercolorists, how much water do you mix with your paints? And I think when you're starting out with watercolors, that's actually quite a difficult thing to come to terms with. So I'm going to just show you two little demonstrations about mixing water with your paints and how much water to put on your paper for different types of paintings. Now, I do a lot of wet in wet painting where I will wet the paper and work on a piece until it's finished, and then I do paintings that require glazing with many layers of paint where you dry the layers in between each painting. Those are really the two types of paintings that I do. So I'm going to first show you how the when I'm glazing with many layers, I wet the paper several times until it really glistens. It's really glossy on top, and you can actually see the water running around the paper. If you can see that there, you can see how many times I'm actually going over this. And then I will take a little amount of paint. Now, I'll do thin layers of glazing where you basically just, I usually do this with a flat brush when I'm glazing, by the way, but I'm just using this one brush to give you a demonstration because I want the finish when it's dried to be even. So I'll hold the paper up, let it run down, and it will create a bead on the bottom, and you can dry your brush off on some paper towel, hold it up and just pick up the bead, because if you don't pick up the bead between each paint drying, it will run back. When the top of the painting dries first, the bead will run back in and create blooms. So you really want to pick up that bead. Now, I would leave that to dry, and I would add my next layer of paint and build up a painting like that. And you get beautiful luminosity from a painting where you build up the layers. And I will show you one at the end of this demonstration where I built up the painting in layers. Now, for the next demonstration, now remember this one I did several coats of water, and for this one I'm not going to do that. I'm going to just make sure that the area is completely wet, and then it's more of a satin look to it, because I want to be able to control, there's a bit of a dry area there, I want to be able to control my painting and the paint. So I'm going to use paint that's a little thicker, more like a 50-50 mix of paint to water. And that, now when I hold that up, you don't get that running. The paint itself will run down, but it won't bead like it did on this side. So I have more control over what I'm doing, and I'm just going to do a little sort of landscape to demonstrate what I'm talking about. And I'm using thicker paint, even a little more than 50-50 here, more paint than water, because I want to have a darker area here. And Let me clean off my brush. And let's add some yellow in here. Let's see. And see, I might even go back and lift some sky here and add some yellow in there. And my paper is wet, so it's still running, but I'm getting some nice texture. Oh, it's a bit more orange there. There we are. See, and I want it to run, and if I want it to run, I just add more. I don't want to add more watery paint. I still want it 50-50 because the paper is still wet, and if I hold it up, it'll run. And I'm going to wipe out some of the dark area here. See, I can play with this. You see how I can play with this as opposed to that for quite some time, because I've only used a satin finish here on the paper. It gives me a lot of control over my paint. You can see this side is starting to dry very light because I used a very thin coating of paint. I can build up glazes and the white of the paper will still shine through. So you can get some really beautiful effects with layering and building up a painting layer by layer, and as opposed to this type of painting where I do the satin finish and work on it until I've completed the painting, which can take from anywhere from 30 minutes to about an hour. A little tip about water on the brush itself. You can completely dry your brush off by gently squeezing the ferrule, which is this lower part of the brush where it goes into the metal part, and you will get rid of all of the water on your brush. You can see I can bend this over. It's quite stiff now. Or if you just want to, if you feel like you've put too much water on your brush and you just want to take a little bit off, you just dab it on the paper and you will still have quite a bit of water in the brush and be able to work on it like that. So that's another way to control water and paint with your brushes. This I built up with about 8 or 9 layers of thin glazes, so you can actually, if you look at this, you can still see that the paper shines through, and that's a beautiful effect, and it's why I like building up paintings with glazes. This was a mixture of building up with glazes in the beginning, and then with the sky I did a satin finish with water like I demonstrated earlier, and used a number of colors to get the darker area of the sky. And this I also built up with a number of glazes, probably about 5 or 6, using about 4 different colors. I used raw sienna, burnt umber, and Payne's grey for this area here, and a little neutral tint just to tone down some of the colors in the sky. But another way of showing how to build up a painting with different thin glazes of paint. I hope you enjoyed this demonstration on how to control water both on your brush and on your paper. And if you can remember just these 2 techniques, and you will be able to do any wet watercolor that you desire. Hope you enjoyed this, and if you did, please give me a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel, and I'll see you next week.